in Europe, a term sheet is always non-binding. So what we want to do before the term sheet, there's quite some analysis we do. Once we have a term sheet signed, we also involve external parties for so-called kind of team due diligence and check where are the strengths of the current managing team, where are blind spots, what should they take into consideration if they expand their C-level. There's a tech due diligence always done, and then obviously the term sheet already sets in stone quite a few of the terms, but some of that usually still needs to be worked out and negotiated for the final transaction documents. All right. Well, great to be speaking with you again. My name is Jonas. I work at Shift Invest. We're based in the Netherlands, impact venture capital fund, already investing in the space since 2009. So one of the older ones. I'm originally from Cologne, Germany, moved to the Netherlands almost 9 years ago, and then started Shift 7 years ago. So also in this space for a while. And we are a broad impact venture capital fund. So we invest in 4 different sectors, and the overarching kind of mission is to fight climate change, biodiversity loss, and depletion of natural resources. So that's kind of the common denominator for everything we do. And the 4 topics we invest in is industries, where we invest in, for example, the real estate industry, but also green biology, green chemistry, etc. And we invest in the energy sector, mobility sector, and last but not least, the food and ag space. And I think that's also what we're talking today. That's also the sector that I'm working most on. We invest primarily in the Netherlands, but we have a mandate to invest broader in Northwestern Europe. We've done investments in Germany. I think that's also one of the investments we can discuss today. Was the most recent one there. Belgium, France, UK, all these are part of our scope. And then we always invest as a lead investor or co-lead in the seed or Series A phase. There's some exception for the Dutch market where we also can invest a bit earlier, but I think this is kind of the overarching or the Shift intro in a nutshell. And our investment sizes are usually 500,000 to 4 million in the first round, and then we can follow on later.
Incredible. First of all, I want to know this. People are going to be listening to this podcast, maybe YouTube. Highly encourage everybody to go on YouTube and see his podcast, because you're going to see Jonas's mustache. And that is, if you want somebody on your cap table, they better have a good facial hair.
Very important. Yeah.
And I would tell you, Shift is definitely grade A level. If you see this mustache, it's amazing. If you just clarifying questions, again, you guys are actively investing, correct?
Yes. So we, like I said, 2009 is when we started with our first fund, our fund family. And we started our 4th fund, Shift 4, last year in the summer. We have a first close at a bit more than 90 million and are currently fundraising as well, but we're also already deploying in the market. So we've done our first investments already and are actively looking right now.
Okay. Amazing. Congratulations. Okay.
Thanks.
Maybe let's talk about the investment you just recently made and the thesis behind it.
Yeah.
It's your mandate.
Yeah. So we invested in a company called Food Forecast. They raised a Series A round. We co-led the investment with ECBF, and current investors are, among others, Scale Out Capital and from Germany, and Future Food Fund from the Netherlands, who you probably also know. It was an 8 million round, really focusing on rolling out their solution internationally. So far, they've been mainly or strongly had some strong traction in Germany, and they now have quite good first steps done in the Netherlands, and the next countries are now on the planning. And next to that, so the international rollout is one, and the other thing is more enterprise customers. So far, they started in the kind of bakery sector. So what they do is they use a lot of data points. So for example, sales data of customers like a bakery, but also weather data about which products are popular, which, vacations are there, etc. They compare all this, and then they make very accurate predictions and also intraday predictions. So they can tell you, if you, Alex, I think you said in an earlier podcast that you used to be working in the kind of food catering sushi business.
I did, yeah.
Yeah, so you need to produce, and you need to know, okay, how many people will come in today? And on a regular Wednesday, maybe that's, 100 people, but the weather is good, so people really want to have more sushi for in the park, and then it's going to be 200 people. And food forecast helps these customers to predict and avoid food waste.
So I'll tell you, first of all, I love the founder of Food Forecast. We haven't talked for a while, I think, because I had him on in his previous
Yeah,
round, which he closed. By the way, that's the nice thing about these big adventures that people are gonna come back in 2 years. Like
yeah,
if he's not back in the podcast, he's dead. It's
yeah,
basically,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
well, I guess that company is dead. It's like it's been 18 months. Why isn't he back in the podcast? Oh, they're dead.
Yeah.
So, and the reason why I really actually funny thing is I think just for our American audience, I think they don't understand this, which is coming, visiting Germany, you realize that you have a lot of these bakeries next to train stations.
Yeah, a lot.
Like people don't understand what it means to have freshly baked goods in the United States a lot of the times.
Yeah.
Like
Okay.
you could just have a bagel 3 days old, right? It's like, no, not in Germany you can't,
No,
right?
no, no, no.
So
Germans are very serious about their bread.
this is a different game. Like I
Yeah, yeah,
remember it, especially some of these places in Cologne when I was video, I was like, oh, you guys are playing in a whole different level. Nobody even understands how much of a game you guys are playing, right?
yeah,
So the idea of like this real-time analytics for bakeries, which are almost like a sushi plate, which has like a 24-hour shelf life, are really significant.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And that's also where they focus on. So the kind of ultra fresh products. So it could be baked goods that in Germany, like you say, if it's 1 day old, then you're lucky if you still find somebody to buy it at a high discount. But also sushi, also sandwiches, salads. There's a lot of things that they can work with, and they basically give you advice on how much to either produce or to order. So it's order optimization and production planning.
So
Yeah,
I have a few questions about if you think about how did you meet this founder? Was it one of their investors introduced you, or was it a conference? Did you reached out to them? How did you even get to learn about them in the first place?
yeah, yeah. So we know Future Food Fund quite well. I mean, they're also a Dutch-based fund focusing on the food and egg space. We did hear, or we did see their investment in them in the seed round. I think that's also when you first spoke with Justus. And so we had them on our radar. And then last year I was at the FNA Next event in Wageningen, and I was
Great
very
event.
keen to meet with Justus. So I think on Thursday, so it's always Wednesday and Thursday just before leaving the venue, at the last, I think 10 or 15-minute quick chat with Justus, and there was a click right away, I think. On a personal level, but I think also I felt like, okay, there's really something here, just based on kind of the the traction they have. That's May 2020.
Okay, what I want to as we talk, I just want to put some meta signals here that I'm hearing, and please confirm them. Right, so it's best practice. First of all, you knew of them because they had an investor that was regional to you who made a bet on them. Right,
Yeah,
that's one of the things. Then you went to a conference where you and him were at the same time. Right, so there was a
yeah,
physical touch point,
yeah,
and that physical touch point then converted a year ago. We're talking about a year ago into a
yeah,
relationship.
exactly. Yeah.
Now, was he at that point raising already, or was that something that you just, okay, that's interesting, let's pin it and we'll come back to it in 6 months?
Yeah, so I remember that he was saying there will be a fundraise, and that's quite often the case. That when I speak to founders, they are planning it, but it's not there yet. And I think that's a very good strategy to already kind of test the waters. What's the response from VCs? I instantly we a few days later we had a follow up, and I indicated that I would be very interested to kind of continue the conversation. And then they started officially after the summer, so that was a few months later. But we did have a short follow up call also with another colleague of mine, just I think a few weeks after the meeting in May, and then in September they kicked off their funding round.
Okay. And when did you actually, how long did it take you to give him a term sheet? Well, how long
Um,
was the due diligence process?
So I think around the second week of September they kicked off the round, and then we instantly had a conversation with them. And I think we had the term sheets mid-end of October, so a bit more than a month
Wow.
later. So that
Sheesh.
was
That's
quite
awesome.
fast. Yeah, I think for us, we did visit them again in Cologne. So that's also why we invest in kind of the countries around the Netherlands, so that we can really meet the team. So I've met Justus before, but we haven't met Jan, for example, the co-founder, and that for us is quite important. It was really good that we can just get in a train 3 hours later. We're there, and We had a good meeting with them there. We could speak with some customers as well, a bakery around the corner and a sushi shop around the corner. So that was really good.
So,
And
yes,
that
I'm
raised our
smiling
conviction.
because for those who understand will understand as like the trains in Germany are horrendous.
Yeah.
When you say oh just as like it's hilarious because the trains in the Netherlands are very good.
Yeah.
And then you just cross path to Germany, it's over. It's like, oh,
It's
and it's
it's
over.
instant. Yeah. It's instant. I
I
used to
said
go
like,
to
oh, it's funny because Cologne and Netherlands obviously very very close. I was like, no, it's gonna take them a while. It's probably like a 2 hour
yeah
trip because an 8 hour trip as soon as you get to Germany. But
yeah. No,
that's
I used to go to the Hack Summit in Lausanne by train, and if there was a connection via Germany, I did that once, and it was just a nightmare. So afterwards, I always took the train via Paris, and it was much more reliable.
we're gonna get just geek out in trains for a second, which is I always again a lot of the founders, let's just say in our world are very eco-conscious,
Yeah,
right? And there was I think a trend. I was like, I'm not flying. I'll never fly. I only go places
yeah,
by train. I was like, if you're a German founder, you're not going anywhere by train. Trust me. You're either gonna walk or you're gonna take a flight. Okay, you're not going anywhere
yeah,
by train. So that's
yeah,
and if you're so eco-conscious, just plant some trees like Bill Gates. Don't worry. That's
yeah,
put
yeah,
in
yeah. Yeah.
Okay, that's my rant on German trains is over, so I'm done with that. So
That's fine.
we're
That's
going
fine.
back to the good thing about Germany, which is the bakeries. That's
Yeah,
uh,
exactly.
so tell me what happened in that month, right? And what can our listeners learn about how you did due diligence? Because it's extremely fast,
Yeah,
extremely fast.
yeah,
What did they show you, and how did they take you through the sales cycle? Like, how do they sell you?
yeah. Yeah, and I think before I'm happy to answer that, but I think it's good. It's also important to mention that that was kind of step one, and then afterwards there was still due diligence done um, until mid of December. So that's when kind of everything was done. So the whole process was a bit longer, but I think it was around 1.5 months to get to the term sheet, and then 1.5 months to finalize most of the things.
Okay, so let's pause for a second there. That's interesting. What happened between term sheet and the finalization? Like what happens in that? That's 2 months. So were you just checking if what they were saying is true? You made these claims on your revenues, and now we're actually gonna have to do diligence on those numbers. You said this about users, so we have to check your users. Is that what it was, or is it something else?
Yeah. So what we want to do before the term sheet, there's quite some analysis we do. We get to know the team. We want to speak to customers. We speak with our own network connections, and we get conviction in the value proposition, the market potential, and the team. And once we have a term sheet signed, we also involve external parties. For example, what we always do is a so-called kind of team due diligence. So we work with external parties that do a team assessment and check, for example, where are the strengths of the current managing team, where are blind spots, what should they take into consideration if they expand their C level. That's one thing. There's a tech due diligence always done, and then obviously the term sheet already sets in stone quite a few of the terms, but some of that usually still needs to be worked out and negotiated. So there's also some negotiation for the final transaction documents.
Okay. So it's very interesting because is that standard? Because I know, in at least in the United States,
Yeah,
the idea of a term sheet being pulled is very bad etiquette on the CEO on the VC side. That's almost
yeah,
like that, very bad.
yeah, yeah.
So it sounds to me very strange that you do a lot of the due diligence work post term sheets. Wouldn't it just make sense to not do a term sheet, extend out the due diligence, and then give a term sheet, no one get pulled, assuming that the founder is now like, that you could do due diligence. The founders like, okay, oops, we just found out that he's a child molester. Probably have to pull that term sheet. No, but so can you like that to me is strange, or it's not strange in Europe.
No, it's not strange in Europe. It's how we always work, and it's I think also how most other VCs that at least we work with are doing it. Some are even saying that we could issue the term sheet even earlier, but we want to do quite some get this conviction and then sign the term sheet because we don't want to, and that usually also doesn't happen, pull the rug off afterwards. So we do get the conviction, we do get the team, our investment committee on board before the term sheet, but then there's still it's often confirmatory due diligence, but it's a lot of things that we want to do in kind of an exclusive setting, right? That's also helps us and also helps the team, because in this case it was a competitive deal. So it helps us to know, okay, we can work on this, we can put resources on this. And it helps also Justus and his team to say, okay, we now focus on these 2 or 3 investors instead of talking with everybody and answering all their requests.
Okay, so I think it would be just worthwhile for us to actually double click on this one, because this is
Yeah.
really interesting. And I haven't had any other guests talk about this, so it's like even better. This is awesome.
Yeah.
So what's actually on that term sheet? Is there a valuation on it? Okay. And okay, so there's a valuation on it. There's an amount that you'll be investing.
Yeah.
Okay. But there's nothing that will prevent you from pulling it.
Well, a term sheet in Europe, a term sheet is always non-binding.
Okay. Yeah.
Kind of legally, you could always say, well, we don't believe in it. But like you say, it's not market practice to do that for no reason. So a term sheet is really a kind of a sign of, okay, we want to do this, at least for Shift it is. And there's already quite a few things that are agreed upon. But yeah, and then the transaction documents, in a case like Food Forecast, there was already obviously professional VCs involved. So the negotiations were all, not too complicated after the term sheet, but there's still details that need to be worked out. How's the governance exactly going to look like? So the term sheet says it should be something that is workable for everybody. And then afterwards you sit around the table and you say, okay, what does that actually mean?
So when you say transaction documents, is that basically what you commit to as the lead of this round? And then let's say those transaction documents are they actually signed or they're not signed until you fill out the whole round?
So at the end, so the term sheet is signed, and then after this you work towards an investment agreement and a shareholders agreement. And these 2 documents together are called the transaction documents, and these are then signed, and that then makes it official that Shift is a shareholder in Food Forecast, for example. And that's not the case yet at term sheet level.
Is the practice, at least in Europe, that you would have a lead investor sign those documents without first the whole round being filled in? Or you have to wait until the whole round is filled in with follows and then you sign those documents? I speak with founders raising every day, and they're all telling me the same thing. It's harder than ever to find investors who are actually deploying, and getting access to those leads takes time founders just don't have. Every month fundraising is a month burning runway. This is why we created FTW Plus, a community of founders actively fundraising. The world's most accurate agri-food tech investor database, plus connecting you directly to ideal target investors and a community of support and accountability. Guaranteed results or your money back. Apply today at www.joinftw.com/hub.
That depends. That really depends. It depends a bit on kind of what the company is looking for and also the profile of the investor. What we sometimes do is we say, okay, we're willing to invest. We do 500,000 to 4 million euro tickets. So we can say we invest 3 to 4 million, depending on if you find a value-adding co-investor. So it's optional, and then the company sometimes wants a co-investor and sometimes they don't. And sometimes we think, okay, these co-investors we already know them, so it would be really good to have them on board. So but there's also funds that say, okay, we can only invest, 2 million or 3 million or 4 million, but you need 6. So we're going to sign, but you need to get another investor on board to finalize the whole. So then you have like it's called condition precedent. So you sign conditional to X, Y, and Z happening. And that could be another investor joining the round.
Yeah. By the way, and thank you for like nerding out on this. This is really good. Guys, if you're bored, that's not our problem. Yeah, keep listening. Keep listening. This is, this part might not be, you can watch YouTube shorts on other screen, but keep.
But it's interesting. So in the US, you said that after the term sheet, it goes quite fast to kind of investment agreement.
I don't want to speak for. I would just say, let's just say, from my other conversations and also being in the industry myself, once a term sheet is written, then we're talking about due diligence basically complete, except for if you lied. So if you made up your customer data, right, and then that they thought he lied. The chance of pulling a term sheet is like very, very, very. There's no deep due diligence post term sheet.
Okay.
It's just to prove out that it's true, right? And by the way, to our listeners, if you disagree with me, then yes, please comment and tell Alex. Alex doesn't know what he's talking about, which is totally.
I would be curious to hear. Yeah. So for us, it's confirm in most cases it's confirmatory. So we do have some hypothesis based on which we invested, and then we want to get confirmation for that. And like you say, yeah, if somebody lies, then that obviously is a problem. But in most cases, in this phase, we proceed then to kind of finalizing the whole transaction.
Last couple of questions here that I think relevant. Tell us, how did they sell you? Like, what did they do well in their sales process that you felt like, oh, these guys know what the heck they're doing? Like,
Yeah,
I'm looking at these signals and
yeah,
they're just meeting the signals.
yeah. Yeah, I think I mean, like you, I've been in the food and egg space for a while now, and I think it's a super exciting space, and there's so many great companies out there. Sometimes it's a challenge that the benefits of the proposition you're bringing into the market can only be verified in a few months or a few years, because you're, I don't know, need to sell to large corporates that take months or years, or you're selling to farmers, etc. And I think for the nice thing about food forecast is they have a proposition where the user has quite instant benefits. So they can even offer free trials. They sometimes do that, where then customers can use it for a while to test it, and then see, okay, it works. We have less food waste, but we also have higher revenues because we have higher availability. And that is just such a strong proposition that they can roll it out and they can realize the growth that they have. So they now have more than 100 customers at more than 3,000 points of sales. And I think it is a competitive space, but the points that convinced us is, one, the traction that they realized, but also the laser focus of the team. I mean, they're young, but they're so focused on executing. And I think that's why also the whole due diligence process was quite efficient, because they didn't want to spend too much time on this and get right back to building and scaling.
Okay. I love that. Absolutely love that, because one of the things, ironically, that kills your business is fundraising.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
can't
Yeah. Yeah.
build a business if you're running around kissing babies all day, right?
Yeah.
And taking out VCs to dinners, right? You have to build
Yeah.
a business. How did they show that to you? What were the actions they did to give you the message of, like, was there a data room that was very clear? Was there customer testimonials already set up for you? Like, what did they do in their process that was like, oh, these guys are about building a business, not just wasting time going out to dinners?
Yeah, yeah. So I think the whole preparation of the fundraise was really professional. Justus also, in your earlier conversation with him a few years ago, mentioned that they have the chief of staff Fabian, who really helped preparing everything. The data room was ready. All the information requests we had were answered, and part of that was kind of give us insights into your customer data. Who are your customers? How long have they been customers? When did they roll out? When did they? Because often it's chains. It's not one or two bakeries. They are also part of the customers, but usually it's in Germany it's a thing. In the Netherlands a bit less, but you have, I don't know, 60 or 160 bakeries, and show us how they ramped up. What were the triggers for your customers to convert? And all this data availability really helped us to be fast and get this conviction.
So I want to add what I'm hearing, and I think this is so powerful. And this comes up a lot when I just talk to founders. They talk about annual, ARR or MRR, or they talk about their growth in ARR, MRR. But I think what you're describing there is a different type of growth, which is land and expand type of growth. Like when I would used
Yeah,
to sell. When I sold software for like last mile logistics software, like very high end
yeah,
packages. So what we were looking for is, like, you're gonna maybe like land in like one store and then apply that for region. Really, you just, if you could just grow and take over one enterprise account, the
yeah.
upside of that is huge. So it sounds like you were looking at not just net new clients, but an expansion of current clients. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, definitely. And also indicators of, one, the kind of international strategy. And like I said, for example, they already had customers in the Netherlands and were already preparing the launches of new countries. And we did see it's not only kind of a proposition that works in Germany because Germans love bakeries, but it also is something that's internationally scalable. And the other thing is enterprise customers. So one of their customers is SSP. You mentioned the kind of the bakeries at the train station. They have a lot of these type of franchise concepts in their portfolio. And we did see, okay, there is potential to grow that account. And there's other accounts in the pipeline, very exciting ones that are being rolled out later this year, also in the supermarket segment. So that was indeed kind of this, on one hand, just growth, but on the other hand, okay, what do they do at these larger customers.
Amazing. I love that. Again, numbers tell a great story. That numbers are really beautiful storytellers. So if you could show customer
Yeah.
numbers, it's like, it shows a very nice story, or
Yeah.
it doesn't, right? So last two questions, three. One is, I understand you're making a bet on the SaaS product. Would you make a bet on a deep tech product as well, or you only make bets on SaaS or no regulatory risk? Like, would you take regulatory risk? Would you take a deep tech risk? If I came to you with something that fits your thesis, but it's 3 years away because of reg, would you look at that deal? Or no, you need to have already post revenue, post reg?
So in general, we do deep tech as well. So we another investment we did is in a company that I wasn't involved in that myself, but it's in the kind of industrial quality control where they use acoustic testing to detect damages of parts in production line, for example, for engines. So that's not in the food and ag space. So we do invest also in kind of deep tech, few years to market.
Okay.
We've
I think it's
we've
important
invested
for
in
our
a
listeners.
company called Jake Craft. They have a factory, a demonstration factory in Amsterdam. So yeah, no, we do that as well.
I love that. What is the typical ownership percentage you need? Is there a certain
So
ownership percentage you
yeah,
want to have of the business post?
we don't have one specific number that we want to
Okay.
reach, but as I said in the intro, we are usually lead investors. So if we're very small, then that's at least an unusual case. So in most cases, we have more than 10%, more towards 20%. That's kind of
Okay.
where we want to get to, but we're opportunistic investors. So
And the one question is more like, how did you guys handle this during due diligence? If you know, when you looked at this deal, when I see SaaS solutions, what I get worried about is, if you look at least in the United States, the value of SaaS companies is just get destroyed, right? Because of AI. I think, like, aren't you worried that some bakery is just going to build the same thing on Claude Code?
I think that's a very legit point, and it's definitely also something that we discuss with Food Forecast, but also with all our other portfolio companies in the software space. So we do hardware and software investments. I think the jury is still out. I think having the conversation with the founders is critical to see how they look at their resilience. In the case for Food Forecast, I'm sure that right now, if a bakery would try to replicate, it would not succeed, because they do build up a data moat um, with all the customers they already serve for a long time, the 3,000 point of sales, etc. And they are also AI native. So they started with AI engineers working on this problem. So I think all the benefits that come from Claude, they can also use. But I think for all the companies out there in that space, it will be very critical to stay on top of things, use it as good as you can, and also monitor what's happening around me. But yeah, it's exciting times.
Exciting times. Well,
Yeah.
this has been a super exciting conversation. I think even the individuals who did not see your mustache, they definitely got a lot of value from this. So we'll make sure to put in the cover art for the episode, so at least they'll get it that way. Can you tell us what, if I'm listening to this now, what are your goals? For our listeners, what are you looking for at the moment? What are you excited about? What kind of type of founder should be reaching out to you? Or
Yeah.
maybe another investor who may want to syndicate a deal with you?
Yeah. Yeah. So we are deploying actively. So we're looking for companies that work on difficult problems and have good solutions for that. For the food and ag space outside of the Netherlands, we do look for companies that already have commercial proof points. So if you're pre-revenue outside the Netherlands, we are not the right one, but that's in the Netherlands, we also invest earlier. So reach out to me via LinkedIn or via our website. And yeah, we're actively deploying. So really looking for companies. So plan is to do a few more investments this year.
Amazing. Well, I'll say this on a personal note. I'll be in the Netherlands for our company. Yana just got picked for Hello Tomorrow.
Oh,
So
nice. Yeah.
we're going to be in the Netherlands, and I expect us to have some big goods together at one of the
Yes, for sure.
customers. We're going to put this to a test.
Yes. Looking forward to it.
Amazing, my friend.
Thanks, Alex.
One more thing. Don't close this episode yet. If you got value from this conversation, here's what I need from you. A 5-star rating, 1 comment, 20 seconds of your time. That's the deal. A 5-star rating means more founders find this content, and every time a founder raises, all boats are elevated. Every week, I pick one random comment and send that person a complimentary copy of Investment Climate, the book. 50 sales playbooks from founders who actually raise money during the fundraising winter. real strategies, real closes, real numbers, not theory. So if you want a copy, comment below. And if you haven't followed the show yet, do that too. And if there's a guest you want us to bring on the show, just drop us a note or send us an email. We'll read each and every one. Until then, keep on raising.